Hi guys. We had a chance recently to sit down with Kate from the Stop Community Food Center to talk about what the Stop does and what kind of role food plays in connecting people and forming communities. Timestamps for the interviews are down in the comments below, and if you like what we're up to, then please consider subscribing and giving our videos a thumbs up. Hope you enjoy.
Commercial kitchen, so again, we prepare about 200 meals a day. This is our chef, Roman. Sorry to put you on the spot. Nutritious food, locally sourced whenever possible, and culturally appropriate. So we switch up our menus a ton. There's usually something new every day, but always a focus on veggies, whole grains, vegetarian and vegan options, and food that is requested by community members. We also run a whole bunch of different programs in here. There's things like sewing groups, crafts groups, yoga, meditation, all kinds of things to get people engaged and having some great conversations in the space. So it's not just about coming in for a meal, it's about feeling like they have ownership here. And the majority of our participants do live in the neighborhood. We're in the basement of a community housing building, so a lot of people come from upstairs, just come right down. We're also around some other social housing projects. There is the Pelham Park complex. So a lot of people come from there, and then it can also be referrals. So sometimes, if a newcomer, Canadian for example, comes and accesses like legal aid services next door, they're often told, if food insecurity is something that is an issue for you, the Stop's right next door. So a lot of other agencies know about us, and they might direct people there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really like how it's integrated with the social housing. It's such a smart idea. It should be happening more.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think those are sites of food insecurity because social assistance rates in this province are pretty woefully inadequate, and so most people who live in social housing are trying to live on those rates. And I think for an individual it's $840, and obviously in the city of Toronto that will barely pay your rent.
Yeah.
So kind of goes hand in hand that if that's your situation, you will be food insecure. So to have these kinds of resources in place, I think is really important, at least until we get, benefits increased, which is really the solution to the problem.
Yeah, and it's something that it's not just about you get food and you leave. There's programs that build community, teach skills, make connections.
Yeah, it's a really important focus of the work because I think a lot of times conventional food banks do become that sort of transactional, charitable approach, which is, the handout that this is what we've got and this is what we'll give you, and kind of take it and go.
Yeah.
And the Stop, I think, from almost the very beginning, was really adamant that this would not be that kind of place, that it was an opportunity to bring people together where they could talk about the struggles that they're going through, and that we in turn could talk about how we can have long-term change. So that manifests itself through our advocacy program, which is just located over there. Through some of our advocacy work with all levels of government. Because it's really important that we understand that hunger isn't an isolated phenomenon. It's something that's really growing in this province, and people can be involved in challenging that. So,
yeah. Have you found that, do you ever have program participants who then go on to volunteer or work here or get it?
Totally, yeah. I'm just saying, we can also move if you don't want to have the samba going in the background. As fun as it is. That's a huge focus of our work. We have been striving to have about a balance in our volunteer program. So 50% are participants who access our meal programs or work in our gardens, and then 50% are other people from the community who just want to help out. But we think it's really important for people to see that they can make contributions to this type of place, and that their role and their presence here is pretty vital. And we do find that volunteering is a great way to build confidence, for people to learn skills.
Exactly.
Yeah, and to feel prepared for different kinds of employment. So there's a lot of people, someone here today, an old coworker of mine who first came to the Stop through the Healthy Beginnings program. She was a new mom, then started volunteering, then started working in the advocacy office, and now she's a paid staff person. Mm-hmm. So we really try to provide those pathways as much as possible.
Yeah, because in different community organizations and initiatives that I've worked in, I think that's often a sign of the really good ones, is you see the people who were participants being involved because they get empowered and they get so passionate about the initiative and what it does for the community. So yeah, that was a question that came to mind. It's really cool to hear that.
Yeah. I think it can be really important, and like so much that happens in the social services. Like, it's really important that you have people represented, that people who have firsthand experience of issues like poverty, food insecurity, what have you, that they can provide that sense of compassion and understanding. So it's sort of the multi-pronged benefit, right? It benefits the people who are accessing those channels, and it just makes us able to provide richer services. So the Stop Community Food Center is, we like to say we use good food to bring people together. That's sort of the fundamental pitch, because we think that can have transformative effects both on individuals and communities. So we use food as a tool to bring people together. The food is nutritious, it's locally sourced whenever possible, and so that's really the priority in making sure that people are able to access food that is served with dignity and that can actually improve their well-being. But then, of course, the most important part of our work is bringing folks together to talk about the issues that they're facing, to build their social networks, to give them opportunities to volunteer, to advocate for systemic change, to learn new skills, to share their knowledge that they may not have had an opportunity to share in the past. So that's really the focus of the work, and so food becomes the through thread that unites all of those various programs. But I think the key part of that organizational title is the community center, about just the community food center. So we have 2 different sites. You've now been to both, which is great. So here is where we do our drop-in program, our food bank, our community kitchens, and our community advocacy program. The other side is our urban agriculture, of course. And the 2 really work in tandem in this beautiful way that I think represents how we would like to see the food system operate as well, right? That we're able to focus on local food that we're growing, people have that connection to, and then is shared amongst our community. So yeah, it's a lot of different programs, but we do feel like there's sort of a unifying mission that's connecting all of them. So.
I was actually wondering how you found out about the Stop and how you got involved.
Yeah. I actually used to work next door, which is a community health center. And so through there, I got to observe the Stop somewhat at a distance, albeit right next to it, and see how the community that we were working with there was so excited to spend time in this space. And the way that they would talk about the food that they were eating and the programs they were part of and the friends that they were making. And I got to learn more and more about how food, it's fundamental both to our health and to our sense of identity, our ability to express our own cultures. And so, next door we're doing some neighborhood programs, but we're also doing the primary health care. And so, of course, the ability for these 2 centers to communicate is pretty crucial. So once I left there, I saw there was a job opening at the Stop, and I said, well, this is perfect. I know this community, and I know that they do incredible work. So since being here, it's really expanded my understanding of how powerful food can be. I got to admit, I wasn't much of a cook or a gardener at all before I came here, but it's certainly given me a deeper appreciation.
Yeah, so cool. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the community around this neighborhood, in terms of demographics or maybe challenges around the area.
Sure. So this neighborhood, it goes by a bunch of different names. Sometimes it's the Junction Triangle, Davenport West, we're just south of Corso Italia, but however you want to define it, it's been a real landing place for new immigrants to Toronto for decades and decades. So it's a relatively transient population. People will come before they find their community elsewhere in the city. We do have a large population of Portuguese and Italian speakers, as well as Spanish and some Jamaican. And so the Portuguese presence, I think you'll definitely feel in this neighborhood, and some of them have purchased homes, but it is one of the lowest income neighborhoods in the city. And I think that's a result of many different factors, including the fact that we don't even have a grocery store in this neighborhood. They're just starting to arrive, so it has been under-resourced for a long time. But of course, like every other neighborhood in Toronto, it's also experiencing rapid gentrification. So that's another project that the Stop is currently addressing, which is building a community coalition around how we can advocate in that particularly uniquely challenging space. But I would say that's sort of the broad summary of the community is that it is predominantly low income, that it is quite a diverse part of the city, and then it's under-resourced in a lot of key ways, which is food access, transit. We're already starting to lose affordable housing options, so very much a neighborhood in flux.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine that must bring some challenges in terms of growing community. So I was wondering, so what are the secrets that the Stop's using to grow community?
That's a great question. The secrets, as far as I see them, I don't think it's a secret. It's very much in line with what you two are doing, which is having conversations with people outside of your immediate vicinity. It's bringing people together. It's creating an environment where people feel comfortable to be vulnerable or to share parts of themselves and to express their concerns and to feel like they're supported when they want to change things, whether it's in their own lives or across the city. I think those pieces are key. I think it's maintaining an environment that is warm, welcoming, and dignified, and that can come through a variety of different ways. That can be getting to know people's names. So as soon as someone walks in the door, it's, hey, how are you? What's your name? Remembering that and repeating that, because so often poverty causes a deep sense of isolation. Shame, for sure, stigma. And the sense that they don't have anything to contribute because they've so often been receiving things that don't meet their needs at all. So creating an environment where their presence is valued, where they're able to give back, where they're able to access food that they like, take part in programs as they like to, things are not imposed upon them. I think that's really key, and once people start feeling like they can express themselves in the space, they quickly start feeling a sense of ownership and connection to their community. And from there, you can build something really powerful. So I guess there's no secret beyond look at each individual and try to make something that you would want to be a part of, the way that you treat your own friends. And so yeah, I guess that's the secret.
The secret's out. Yeah. But I don't know. So for this week, Matt's been staying over at my house with my parents and me in North York, and we've been feeding him all kinds of Korean food, and so my parents, when they see him just eating all the Korean food, that just I think it's very validating and rewarding for them to see he loves our food.
Yeah.
That's such a deep feeling.
I grew up in rural Midwestern Ontario, by the way,
Okay.
not very much culture at all, or I didn't have a chance to really try Asian food or anything like that, and basically for most of my life. So I think that's part of the context too, is me as just a rural country kid coming in, but being able to actually connect over sharing food and trying new foods that I've never tried before.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. And we actually learned how to make kimchi recently.
Oh,
June's
nice.
parents taught us, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet.
I think, definitely even between that's so true. Just in the last week, food has been one of those areas that we've been able to bond and connect.
Yeah.
For me, so that's been really, it's so true.
I mean, it contains so much, the history of why we eat the things that we eat are often tied to things like displacement, slavery, different access to different ingredients. And so when you look back at a culture's food, you can really learn a lot about the people. And so then, of course, when you're able to share that and share your own personal stories about what the food means to you, how your parents used to prepare it, or eating with your grandparents, what have you. It contains both something that's deeply personal and something that's more broadly cultural and historical. So yeah, it's a great entry point to many different conversations.
Yeah, and I feel when we eat, there's just a natural desire to eat with people and talk with people when you're eating. I don't know, having been in university, I always would try to go and eat food with friends, or I live with my brother and a few of my friends as housemates, and we always sit down together for dinner, and it's that becomes a part of your sort of identity, or something that keeps you grounded. Whereas if you just are always eating alone in front of a screen or what have you, it can be very isolating.
Yeah.
So I definitely I'm just thinking about all the different ways that food really can be such an access point for community and for building a sense of connection with other people.
That's a hugely important point. We're noticing that, you know, in urban environments across the country, that people are becoming much more isolated, even if you don't live in poverty. I mean, far more people live alone than they ever have in the past, especially seniors. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of them live alone, and it's really hard to find those points of connection, which is why you know, something as simple as a community meal can be transformative in that way. Because I think the way we're living our lives in our urban environments sometimes predisposes us to loneliness. So.
Especially if it's a space that sort of actively welcomes and encourages community. Like if you walk into a McDonald's and you order a burger, you're probably not going to sit and talk with someone. Like actually, those spaces are sort of, in the way they're constructed, isolating. Like you go in and you're probably not going to meet a new person, or just you're not going to feel like you can really, everyone's minding their own business and you don't want to disturb anyone. Whereas a space that is like specifically based on like bringing people together, I could see how that would maybe be a little more more connecting and more useful for people to actually like not just come to eat, but also come to get more out of the experience.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I couldn't grab you like during the mealtime, but
it's no worries.
But it's pretty amazing to see the different you know, groups that form in different places in the drop-in. There's this table of mamas, and they're all women in their, I guess, 60s and 70s, and God, they're so loud. They take up so much space. They're having so much fun. If they don't like the food, they will let you know. But they are like dear friends, and they are there every single day, and it's so beautiful to see. Like, oh, the mamas, they're the mamas. Like. You know, people really find their cliques.
And yeah, it's like you're talking like seniors these days, that they're especially one of the populations more at risk for isolation. So people in their 60s and 70s are able to come here and have that as like one of their like hubs for their social life. That's just something special.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I was also wondering what's next for the stop, or for community food centers as a whole. If you could comment on that.
Sure thing. I couldn't comment about community food centers as a whole, but I could speak specifically to the stop. So I will share with you our strategic plan, which I know sounds very, very dry, but I will also just tell you about it right now.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of helpful to refer back to. So we have a couple of different major priorities. One is understanding that we can't do this work in isolation, that so many of the issues that we've already been discussing really are systemic. You know, they're about cuts to social services, to social assistance rates, to legal aid. You know, people don't get hungry in a vacuum. It's a series of policy failures that we're seeing time and time again. So if we truly want to create a city where people can access food and they can access community, it's imperative that we connect with other organizations and other movements that are talking about these very real issues. So that's a big focus of our work, is connecting with groups like 15 and Fairness, you know, Food Secure Canada, groups that are looking at food through a human rights lens and through an anti-poverty lens. That's a big piece. We're also deepening our Indigenous solidarity work. So we do on a Meshkikiaking medicine mill garden. So that's a permanent space where people can grow Indigenous medicines and plants, share knowledge. And that's the kind of work that we need to keep expanding upon, both through our actual programming and through our advocacy, because, you know, if we're talking about access to food, Indigenous communities in the city have been time and time again denied access to the ability to have food through a variety of different ways. So that's a big piece for us. I think, what else? Unfortunately, a lot of the other things are just keeping the doors open in a time that is quite tumultuous. You know, organizations across the city are struggling with scarcity as rents increase and as you know, available funding decreases. So we're thinking about innovative ways to engage our community and support this work. And as gentrification very rapidly arrives in our neighborhood, it's thinking about ways about how we can bring people into this conversation, because sometimes that conversation can become very black and white. It can become, you know, you have money, you're coming in, you're displacing people, and of course that can be accurate, but we think there's also an opportunity to bring in these new people who are arriving to you know, expand their understanding of who's been in this community, you know, and what they need and how they can support that, so that we can work together to you know, create space for all of us, because I do think that that's possible. So that's a big movement that we're currently organizing. We got a meeting tomorrow with about 10 stakeholders from across the neighborhood to think about how we can have some real tangible impact in that space. What else were we doing?
So much.
I know. I work in the communications and fundraising department, so my mind tends to go in that lens. But other programming staff, I think, could also answer your questions if you want to know specifically about, how are we sourcing food, or like what are the priority populations? Is that shifting? I can definitely connect you with people who would be far more knowledgeable than me.
I was actually just wondering where the funding for the stop actually comes from, just because you were talking about how it's been like tighter for a lot of community organizations lately.
I mean, that's a great question. We are very, very unique in that about 90% of our funding comes from non-government sources. So that's from individuals, that's from businesses, that's from people coming to our events.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing to have that kind of community support. And almost all of our donors are within the city of Toronto. So it's a real local focus. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. And it certainly is great, because when we are in situations like the one we're in now, where we are vocally opposed to certain government policies, we don't have to worry about our funding being cut, because we've got individuals who support this mission and will sustain us in that work.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say it feels like a bit of an ironic, uncomfortable position to be in, to have a great deal of job security working in an organization like this. Meanwhile, my friends who work in public health, legal aid, education, health, are dealing with state of precarity. But it does make things a bit easier for us. Of course, we do have to constantly be fundraising and raising awareness of these issues to bring more people in to donate to this work. But we're not really beholden to the government in the same way. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Because I know it can be very challenging, especially like negotiating or figuring out with the government. Literally just coming out of the community from people donating is really cool.
It's a beautiful statement on how people are responding to the mission, and it also allows us to work so much better, because needs change very swiftly. And to be able to say, okay, we do have $2,000, let's say, to hire a temporary person to support this program, or to increase our stocks of whatever vegetable we're currently short of. To be able to do that swiftly and not have to fill out a grant application and wait 6 months, it's transformative.
So true.
Yeah. So it does mean that we've got a bit of a fundraising machine going, but it's been helpful. Mm-hmm. So as you may or may not know, summer is actually quite a busy time for many food banks.
Oh
yeah. Most people tend to think about donating end of year, around Christmas time. Donations in the summer definitely drop off, and also students are out of school, so they lack access to school food programs. So we do have a lot more children in the space than we tend to. This is probably one of the most vibrant bake ovens you've ever seen.
Wow. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, isn't it great? So we when we do our bake oven days, we set up these giant tables, and little kids can roll their own dough, they can make their own pizzas, and then we have volunteers who, shovel it in.
Mm-hmm.
As another way of kind of mitigating those uncomfortable conversations that can happen, especially when people are volunteering, like around privilege and power. We've started running a series of anti-racism, anti-oppression trainings, which are now mandatory for our volunteers, because that can often be an issue, like when you're working a food bank and you feel like you're bestowing, your generosity upon the people who are coming. There's a severe power imbalance, and unless you're able to, really examine what is bringing you to volunteer and what you hope to accomplish through these interactions, you can easily replicate some of those very harmful dynamics that already exist in our society. So making sure that people understand, what is bringing people into our space, how to treat people with respect and dignity, and understand that, they may be in very precarious, very uncomfortable situations. That's been a big focus of our work in the last recent years. And so staff and volunteers and any participants who want to engage in those conversations are welcome to attend. And I think it's really critical, because so often that can happen, like in the nonprofit sector and charities, that you come in with the best of intentions, but because you're not thinking about all the ways in which you exist in the world and all the privileges that can bestow upon you, you end up harming people in the way that you hopes to help them. So
Hopefully if you come into that space, it's because you want to be there and you like being with the people, and not because you want to be a savior or some kind of hero.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be hard to tease those two apart sometimes. I feel like, well, we know, like we were medical students, and medical school is notoriously competitive to get into, as you know, and like sometimes you see people volunteering for things, and you're like, they are literally just doing this to pad their resume, because they're applying to medical school or what have you. Like that's definitely something I think I lived through a bit in the last 4 years when I was thinking about applying to med school and seeing some of my colleagues and others. So like, it definitely is, your heart has to be in the right place, and it's not just something that you're not just there by default by showing up, you're doing good. There has to be like, you can do harm, and you have to like be aware of that and to be coming from the right place and doing it because you genuinely are passionate and interested and want to, and not just for the sake of, oh, this is a volunteering thing I can put on my resume, you know.